here is something that I do think is real. Like, I mentioned earlier.
How does a fat person kill themselves?
No,
Because they can't.
No, let's not go there.
They can kill
Christ.
themselves any way they want. That's how they kill themselves. They can do anything they want.
Okay? There's a bit for you because I did not expect that.
Welcome to Raisin Bread, everybody. We've got Mike Hobart. Is it Hobart? Hobart. At Derek Smith, Ben. Excited to see you guys today. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. I've actually been having a lot of fun watching markets cascade for the last 36 hours. So,
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's depressing.
That's not depressing.
Yeah. Well, I think it is. Well, it does for some. I mean, it depends on who you are.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You guys are excited, right? Because it's time to buy.
Yep.
Yep. Buy the dip.
Derek, I felt the venom in that
No.
from across the world.
You guys are excited. I couldn't get.
I don't have any money. Like, I have no money.
I sit. Yeah, no, you're. I'm in a very similar position where you sit there and you just go like, look, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to. If I could, I would happily buy this dip. Love buying me a dip, but I just can't at the moment. I can't front it up. So I'm going to watch it ascend, despairingly, and think if I had the money, I would have bought that dip.
Yeah.
It's only even been recent that people even want to talk about money. Like before the pandemic kicked off, nobody wanted to talk about markets or money. It wasn't even until like after 2021 that people wanted to start talking about money.
Yeah. No, that's also true. I mean, the only reason why people like there's a
everybody got a little bit, and they're like, does anybody know how to use this?
Everybody. Everybody got the $1,200, and they were just like, "What? What do we do with this?"
We buy cars. That's what we do. We buy
No.
cars.
You buy NFTs of monkeys, and you put that money on Robinhood into financially defunct companies like AMC and GameStop.
What if you just want to eat yours? Man. Can you eat yours?
Does anybody know how to use this?
Or eat this? I would submit. Yeah.
Well, they clearly don't know how to do that either because they didn't buy any real food. They just bought ice cream and Oreos.
Yep.
That is
because it's better. It's better than real food. Real food, a vegetable.
Have you tried real food?
Grow it at home. It's so boring.
It's terrible.
Yeah. I'm a vegan because it's not that good, and it helps me keep my weight down. Because I'm not going to sit down and eat a whole pack of carrots. I can tell you that.
This goes back to the talk about people who say that they love running. So from that I take that you're not exactly a militant vegan.
No, I just
Derek, a militant vegan. No. Is that what you think, Ben? Is that what you?
If I want to know, I'm going to ask.
Yeah, fair enough. Wait, sorry.
I guess. What do you mean by militant? Am I like?
As in, like a zealot, like the kind of the evangelical ones.
Oh, that I got to tell everybody that they should be vegan?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
No. So you're not an inquisitor, is what you're saying?
No, not at all. But I'm pretty strict because I can't trust myself. And basically the rule is if it's really good, then I probably am not allowed to have it. It's probably got shit in it that
such a depressing lifestyle, dude.
Yeah, it is.
This is why I tell people to just lift heavy shit and eat a bunch of steak. Because then you're here's a little education for everybody after all this joking around and stuff. Like you lift heavy, you stimulate hypertrophy, which is growing muscle, and then to fulfill the growth adaptation that you're stimulating, you eat like high nutrient density foods, which is meat and whole milk, and then you grow the muscle. The muscle increases your caloric demand and like on a daily like lifestyle rate, right? And then that also, by increasing the caloric demand, you increase how much of like your fat stores you're eating up. You guys want to hear some depressing statistics that a buddy of mine gave me, who's a very intelligent individual that graduated from Harvard and was in military intel.
Safety school.
Yeah.
Go on.
And but he told me the other day that 60% of U.S. males aged 18 to 50 haven't had a sexual partner in the last year. But for women,
what percentage?
60%. 60.
60.
Yeah, 60. And for women, it was only 18%. So 86% of women are sleeping with 40% of the men.
That sounds about right.
Right.
I mean, it does. Of course, it sounds right, but it's still 60. Because that was the thing that shocked me there was that's a big age bracket.
Yeah.
18 to 50. Yep. That's a big age bracket. And 60% of all that whole group of men haven't had a sexual partner in the last year.
You heard the man. He said y'all not got no. That's what he said. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
He said y'all are maidenless.
Well,
the
real point is to tell all the guys to get off Tinder and go talk to them. That's probably the big one.
Yes. Yes.
Never heard of it.
Now, I'm a hypocrite here because a dating app actually paid off for me, but I would say that is because I was actively going out and meeting people. Like, because that was the point. Like, for me, the chat thing, like Baz and I, we've done an episode on dating apps, and it's like the idea that I was, in fact, I was speaking to a girl in lockdown, and I was like, should we meet up? And she was like worried about COVID. And I was just sitting on, how long do you think we're going to be able to sustain just texting interest, hypothetical? Because nothing's proven at that point until you meet somebody. Because I remember having this conversation with my grandpa about dating apps, where I said, like, because he said, oh, hasn't it kind of, it almost sounded a bit like Jordan Peterson, because he said, like, oh, there's no risk of rejection. It's like, well, it depends on what world you want to live in. If you want to live in the world of just swiping and collecting the matches like a trading card collection, then fine. But if you actually want to meet somebody, then you still do face rejection, because you could meet up with them and they could still say no. It's just, it depends. What I think at the point where he had a point was the fact that he is aware, even though he's never used the technology, he is aware that there is a huge cohort of men who will just reside in fantasy land of collecting the matches and never doing anything about it and going out and meeting people.
What? You mean all these medieval fairs that are running around town? These people will just delude themselves and live in a fantasy?
Careful.
Yeah. What's the matter?
Careful.
I was getting close to home.
Remember, only I can say it's. Well, you're a dork, but that's a nerd.
You're a dork. I'm a nerd.
You can't just be throwing around N-words,
But it gets to the point I think was like the intent of having the conversation while I was on here anyway, which is like you get to the conversation point of which I'm not complaining. The conversation this whole hour has been awesome. It's been fun as hell. But like you get to the conversation point of like this dating problem, but then you also have the problem of like how, like, what was it? 60% haven't had a sexual partner. How big of the percentage do you guys think are guys that are like suck at being a masculine individual? I bet it's a high percentage, because how many of them are gonna
too masculine?
I doubt that. I really doubt
fucking
that.
Wolves.
Really doubt
scary.
Because they look like you have the
like
issue
Ogre
of
from Revenge of the Nerds.
you have the issue of the guys that are gonna be posturing as overly masculine, like you're talking about. Like they're like, oh, I'm super competitive. Right. I have to win. I have to get laid. And it's like, well, women can pick up on the fact that that's a load of bullshit. It's like, no, you're projecting that masculinity to cover up your insecurities because you feel like you're not good enough. And
what do you mean, authenticity or something?
Yeah, that's a long forgotten word. Like at this point, everybody's trying to just like pretend to be somebody that's desirable, when in reality, you're going to be desirable if you're just yourself.
Quite,
yeah.
and that.
Wait. I disagree with you. That is not true.
The representative from Oklahoma would like to speak and use his time.
It makes total sense, Mike. I'm looking at you when you say just be yourself. If myself is you, then yes, I should be myself. But if I'm not like that.
Yeah, but
I'm smelly.
But
that's
know,
who I am. I'm a smelly guy.
We all know
Nobody
the
likes
funny
that.
guy that still gets laid.
Right. But also, because it's like it is a broad church, but because to your point, Mike, it's like, but even then, right? The authenticity is. This is two worlds crashing together. I'm loving this, but it's like the authenticity has to at least be the starting point.
Yeah.
Like, because if you are no good with women for whatever reason, and by the way, when I say you, I'm actually not saying you, Derek.
No,
I do not imbue you like this. Don't do that. No. Don't you dare. No, absolutely not.
I also think
absolutely not. But okay, thou. I'll use that pronoun instead. If thou art unsuccessful, but thou ist being oneself. It's too much effort. It's too much admin. But it's like, no, because that's at least the starting point. Because then at least if you acknowledge that you have no ability with the opposite sex, and that's your starting point, you then build on that authentically, and then you can become desirable to the opposite sex. But it's like, because if you're starting from a lie,
this builds on top of the something that I've talked about a lot on other spaces, conversations and podcasts, where I noticed this in my own generation. So I'm a millennial, but it's been potently problematic for millennials, and I think it's even worse in Gen Z and younger. Is that I call these individuals the narcissistic nihilists, because we've specifically the millennials, we came to adult age, 18, right? During the global financial crisis, the market was falling apart, the job market was shit, and then it hasn't really gotten any better since then. And then on top of that, we were pushed into all of society. My parents were like, you need to go to college, get a degree, get a good job.
Yeah.
But when 90% of the market is doing that, you devalue the value of the degree, making the job market even harder to get. Now you're in however many decimals of thousands of dollars in debt. And then, so you're the prospect of the future is getting harder and harder to be excited about. And then you encounter the housing market where nobody can afford to get a house responsibly. And all this stuff starts to stack on top of you to the point of where they're so nihilistic. They're like, fuck it. What's the point? I'm just going to, the prospects are not good.
Yeah. What is the point?
The prospects are not good. I'm already insecure. So if the prospects aren't good, why should I work to improve myself if the prospects aren't good? So I'm just going to pretend like I'm the best that I need to be. I don't need to improve. And then I'm going to project all of these proper masculine traits to try and attract a mate so I can get laid and stop jerking off all the time. But they don't realize that lack of authenticity is just you can pick up on it when somebody isn't being authentic with you. I can pick up on it. Now that I've practiced for the last decade, it's as soon as somebody feels like they're being fake, I don't want to fuck with you. Get away from me. I don't trust you. You're going to try and take something from me. You're going to try and stab me in the back. As soon as you feel like you're going to have the possibility of gaining something out of me, you're going to do it, and it's going to harm me in the process. So I'm just not going to deal with you. But then you're dealing with entire generations that are potent narcissistic nihilists, to the point of where they also these individuals, because I have had multiple friends that are like this. These individuals, because of the mixture of nihilism and narcissism, they will manipulate those around them, and then they will try to develop echo chambers around them so that it just feeds into their narcissism, so that they feel like king of the mountain.
Okay.
Yeah, I have definitely
I like this plan.
But you see how it makes a really, really, really problematic dating scene, because it's happening on both sides of the aisle, both men and women.
Oh yeah.
And
yes, it certainly is.
And
absolutely.
then they're both complaining about they can't find anybody authentic, but they refuse to improve themselves to become authentic and actually find somebody that they're actually looking for. So that like, and then that's where you get this prevalence of this combative language between the two, where it's like, oh, all women are like this, all men are like this, men just want this, women just want this. And then like, so like these individuals, because of their nihilism and narcissism, they're trying to develop these echo chambers. They're also keeping score because of the narcissism.
Were you always this authentic, or did you notice a change? Did you engineer a change in yourself?
No, I was wildly insecure.
Like when did it change for you?
It started, I noticed it about 22, 23. My age, when I was 22, 23 years old. So
what was that? Go into that a little bit more. What was it that you noticed about yourself?
So in order to get into that, we have to kind of go through my back history a little bit. I'll try and keep it.
Sure, let's do that.
Keep it condensed. But so as a child, I went through some dark stuff. My parents were working all the time. My sister and I basically grew up in daycares, and my grandparents like had us on the weekends because my parents were just like grinding away, doing an awesome job at like improving the living standard and all that. But it got to the point where my only close friend and my only consistent friend that I could actually hang out with was my grandfather. My grandfather died when I was about 4th grade. So the way I describe it to individuals, because as a child, things hit differently. When that event kicked off, when my grandfather died, I basically lost my best friend, my only friend, and my grandfather all at the same time. So I reverted to, I was an extremely extroverted child. I was really good at school. I was a smart kid. I was really creative. I was the best artist in the area, like all this stuff. As soon as that event kicked off, I went depressed. I went from extroverted to introverted. And then because of the fact that I was a good artist, I went introverted. People watched me go from extroverted to introverted. I became like the weird kid. And through middle school and high school, I got picked on a lot because I was also a super, super skinny kid. The way I
I don't know what that's like.
The way I describe it was the widest part of my legs was my knees. Like I was skinny. And
wow,
Chet Holmgren, like your shoes look baggy. Like that really scary.
Yeah, exactly. So getting into high school, like when I got about 16, 17, I started working for money, started actually interacting with people a little bit more. Obviously puberty's hitting and I'm getting interested in girls. So I want to try and fail miserably from 17 all the way up through like 23, 24. But 17, I also started getting interested in working out because my dad was a power lifter back in high school and he knew how to do a lot of the stuff. So I started learning from him. But then at 17, during the working stuff, I also lost my only group of friends because I found out that they were keeping me around to pick on me. Like they were literally just keeping me around to pick on me and then talk shit to me behind my back to the rest of the high school.
Wow.
So they're fucking great. I love them.
So I learned how I like not a whole lot of people actually experience losing like their whole support systems multiple times, like their friends circles, right? So I was kind of forced into finding a new friend circle. I got into partying that way. Really started drinking heavily at 17. Continued drinking extremely heavily up through 23. And then right about 23, I hit this point where I was like, okay, I'm not doing well in school. Like I got an associate's degree, which like you can be in a coma and get an associate's degree. Like literally you just have to convert oxygen to carbon dioxide and get the degree. It's not hard. And that's particularly why I did it. So I could just party in college the whole time. And then I actually get to university because I want to just keep partying and trying to get laid. And I suck at everything except for partying, apparently. So I got to the point of where I realized that like if I don't change how I'm living, I'm going to end up either dead, alcoholic, or in a jail cell or some mixture of the three. And so that was when I enlisted in the Army. And then New Year's Eve 2013, I went off to basic training. And then that kind of kicked off like this whole other thing of going on a, like really just using basic training as the reset to kind of rewire my brain and fix myself. Because that's also where I started reading heavily. And the book I read during basic training was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And that kicked off a whole other whole other ordeal.
The German.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, you had
so then that's your
you had asked
so that's your backstory.
Yeah, you asked a question. What was the question? I forgot what the
the question was. No, that's exactly what we need to know. So it's like then, and it was at 22, 23 because this is where you remarked that you saw the change happening.
Yeah.
So do you think that which came first, like chicken and egg question, which came first, the basic train, the signing up for the army, or and then there was a change in you, or I need to make a change. This is going to push me over the edge. Joining the army is going to push me over the edge.
At 17, I realized that I was disgusted with the person I'd become. So that's why I started trying to get better at talking to people and making friends and like trying to figure out how to talk to girls and stuff. But at 23 was when I fully admitted to myself that I was weak and I was a coward. Those were the big things. And those are things that I think 90 to 95% of the young men out there, they can't handle coming to that, like admitting that to themselves.
Yeah, of course.
There's a really funny pie chart that I saw on Twitter the other day, and it was one of those ones where it's like got a hairline and then the rest of the color, and it was like men's reasons for thinking they can beat you in a fight, and the line was because they're trained at fighting, and the rest of it was because you don't know what I'm like when I get angry, man. When I see red, you don't know what's going to hit you, and that delusional kind of, well, you know, I've been angry before, and I broke something, and it's like, yeah, man, so is everyone.
There's a very few number of us that have actually hit red and hit people and caused damage, and you
right.
Unless you're a psychopath,
feel bad
you don't
immediately. Yeah. Nope.
Right.
No. Well, it's like even when you hear people, and I'd say he's a pretty masculine guy. Even when you hear people like Jocko Willink, when he says, you know, if there's an altercation in the street, if somebody confronts me in the street, most likely I'm going to run away, because that's the best thing to do. Yeah, it's not worth it. But that's the other thing is that's something that you notice. Baz and I have had this conversation before. That's something that you notice when you meet people who are trained fighters. They're not interested in a scrap in the street. They're out of there. Because they what they got to prove. But I want to bring it back to the change in you, because the reason I ask is because I identify with it, right?
Accidentally get fucked up.
Yeah,
like you can
accidentally and then kill somebody. That's what they don't want to deal with.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but it's like I want to bring it back to what I want to bring it back to what caused the change in you, and the reason being is I identify with it. So, like for example, similar age to what you said, right? I think I was a bit younger. I was 21. And I wasn't like a bullshit artist, but I would certainly embellish things that happen.
I definitely understand that.
And and then I really wanted to stop doing that. So it's like just make it. And then it was when I heard Jordan Peterson say, "Stop saying things that make you feel weak," and that was when a light went on. It's like that's what I'm doing. I feel weak because it's when you get the reaction from the thing that isn't entirely true. And because you know it's not entirely true, but you got a positive reaction from it, you got the positive reaction on a false premise. So like that for me. So I wanted to throw the question to you then. What was the change? Were the changes that you made?
The first one was to stop lying to myself. That's why I started.
Yourself,
because like that's like the first thing, because when you lie to yourself, you justify lying to the rest of the world. And when you're lying to the rest of the world, you know you're lying, and you know what the character that you're like projecting is a fraud. So then it reflects back onto you that like it just makes you believe deeper and deeper that you're a fraud. Like that's what prevents people from going out and taking risks and trying new things. Because they're like, oh, well, I'm a fraud. Like, I don't deserve this, or I can't do this. It's just like, no. But you're not looking at yourself in a fair or graceful manner to accept that if you want to try something new, but you're afraid of looking like an idiot. Everybody looks like an idiot when they try something new. It is very, very rare that somebody tries something new and they look like an expert or a genius. Like everybody has to struggle with it. Like that's getting to that point. I was like, oh, okay. So maybe I can start doing this. And then like when you stop lying to yourself, and this kind of gets into like some of the stuff that Jordan Peterson talks about. It's like you stop lying to yourself and you keep promises to yourself. You start to actually gain confidence in your capability. And then that reflects outwards and then that gets into the point of where you're not lying to yourself, and you understand the things that you believe to the point of when you're talking to somebody, you're not afraid of like how they're going to react when you're authentic with them. It's like, because that's one of the other reasons that people lie to other people.
That's huge.
Because they want to they're like, I want people to like me. It's like, no, I want you to like me because I'm me. So I'm going to tell you the honest thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't like me, fine. We don't have to deal with each other. We can go on our separate ways, because life is literally no different now than it was 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
you know,
as a comic,
I've been
Derek's
trying to
like,
write
no.
down the notes here, and this is what I'm getting from your change. You gotta, first of all, you need to take an honest self-evaluation, and you gotta introspection, self-analysis, and then goal setting, and working on yourself. This sounds like cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah. And you
you
missed the most important part, which is accepting that you're a pussy. Like you have to.
Oh, okay.
Like as a guy, you have to accept that you're a bitch. Like you have to. Because
it's very true.
There is no way to get to the point of actually doing something worth bravery or worth courage without just being like, I'm a pussy. Because if you don't tell yourself that, and then you build yourself this lie of like, oh, if I was in that situation where I had a gun pointed in my head, I would totally act this way. Where you set this higher bound that is not justified yet, to the point of where you encounter that event, you lock up because you're like, oh, I told everybody that I would be this, but I really want to do this because I'm scared. And then you hesitate, and then you end up rebounding back to the fear response that you don't want to do, because like you've set yourself up with that fragility.
All right. I love that. The don't over exaggerate what, be honest with yourself. My favorite version of somebody going way over the top with that is Mark Wahlberg saying that he could have stopped 9/11. Because if he'd been on the plane, he would have stopped.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the best ones.
When was this?
This is fantastic.
He says,
this is a hell of a pivot.
Scheduled to be on one of the planes.
It's an excellent pivot.
He said, if I was on that plane with my kids, it wouldn't have went down like that. Like
I remember
it did.
that. Yeah.
There would have been a lot of blood in the first class cabin, and then me saying, okay, we're going to land somewhere safely. Don't worry. Yeah. Of course, Mark.
Wow.
That's what's going to happen.
The last part is probably the hardest part to believe.
Yeah.
Mark
landing the plane.
Mark has a lot of confidence in his capability to land a 747.
Yeah, the idea that he's getting on a YouTube tutorial trying to get reception.
Our phones.
How to land a 777 Dreamliner.
Do that back then
either,
by the way.
No, you're right. They couldn't. Not in 2001. You'd be asking somebody to text you. How do I land this thing? Which of these 8 levers?
You'd have to bring the phone. You'd have to bring the plane down to like 10,000 feet and keep it straight so that you could get a phone call to your friend that's a pilot. It's like, hey, dude, you need to help me land this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to land a 737.
And you'd have to do it there as well. You would. You'd have to do it.
Or you could spell it out
ear to shoulder.
You could spell it out in the sky, right? And do a loop. How do I land?
Well,
this
now
thing,
you're getting into the whole. And I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna have to bleep
This has been the podcast of tangents. Look, I'm here for it.
You too.
But no, it's a very good point.
It's like this video is banned for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason.
Yeah.
I won't even resubmit. I'll just be like, this seems fair.
Yeah.
It's like,
but
I agree.
That bit's really important that you bring up about because the other thing that it is kind of interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive about that is it's very easy to take what you're saying as a negative. For when you say acknowledge that you're a pussy, it's very easy to take that as a negative of like, oh, that's putting yourself down. It's like it actually isn't, because the real virtue there is honesty and transparency with oneself. So then once you know that about yourself, now you can take action. Because it's exactly like you say. If you, but what would you say that there's any merit to the point of like the whole fake it till you make it idea? Like that sort of mantra.
I think that there's
people can convince themselves of things.
I think that there's validity to it, but I think that the populace has pushed it too far, because I don't buy into the whole like fake it till you make it thing. But when you're doing something new, you do kind of have to just be like, look, we're just gonna try it. Like the best way to do something new. Like I'm starting my first business. I've never done it before, but I'm not going to go out and talk to people like I'm brand new to it, because that's not how you make sales and that's not how you do any of that. Right. So like you have to, that mantra being pushed and copy pasted everywhere nobody has adhered to any of the nuance of it. It's like, oh no, just fake it till you make it. It's like, no, because if you try to fake it till you make it without the authenticity, you're never going to make it. So you kind of need the authenticity and shit first, and then you can fake it till you make it for the first like quarter of trying to do something new, and then, whatever else.
So let me see. Let me. I love pushback.
Can I throw? I just want to throw one little quote in that I think is really perfect about this. It's like one of my favorite Arthur Ashe quotes. It's the start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can.
Yeah,
I like that, breaking it down. It's so nice because it's 3 things, and that's easy, and it makes me feel good when I look at it and I say, Arthur Ashe, I could be like him.
But it is very valid. Like,
I think it's valid.
Yeah, it's extremely valid, because you like, if you're going to do something new and you're going to try and do whatever it is that you're doing without having or without adhering to whatever it is that you have at the time to do it, then like, what are we talking about? Like you're gonna try and start your own business when you don't have the idea or the structure or the product or anything. Like, yeah, like you've already failed.
That's a system, though.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, systems can be created and changed. I wanted to offer this pushback because, like, I don't know, man. I don't. A lot of this stuff to me seems like, I don't know how you guys grew up. I grew up with foreigners, so they tell you what you're doing wrong all the time. They're very vocal about it, actually. So a lot of this stuff is like, yeah, that's what you should be doing, right? Like, you should probably. I mean, I've had conversations with you on Twitter about this, where it's like, well, I'm like, I have an old world background, so I already know X, Y, or Z, because someone was either telling me it or I was telling myself that. Is that? I mean, is that what happens in the U.S.? I feel like guys are pretty, like, when I see guys, like, this might make more sense if I give an example. When I see like women encourage each other, it's kind of over the top, right? It's like, you're a 10. It's like,
it's insincere.
Like, they'll tell each other that, right? But when guys talk to each other, right, it's like the opposite extreme, where it's like, yeah, man, you just got to wake up at like 4 a.m. every day, right? Every day. And it's like the flip side of that, if that makes sense. And it's because, like, I think guys are really problem I mean, or I think most humans are oriented towards, or they should be oriented towards problem solving. But I think men are oriented to problem solving, and so they're used to getting critically discussed or reviewed or
critiqued,
what have you. Right, exactly. And so I'm wondering, like, is that the issue? Are people not critiquing themselves?
Yeah, enough? I think that there's multiple different problems here. I think that the U.S. is its own petri dish of a lot of, and this goes back to like what we mentioned with the customer is always right mentality. Mix that kind of approach to parenting and interacting with the average individual, and mix that with the nihilistic narcissist that wants everybody to be their friend, to where they're giving them lies in order to try and gain their personal favor. So you're already on a bad kind of keel there, but then you're also dealing with like the last 20 years of the participation trophy bullshit.
Right.
And so you've got a lot of people that have grown up in the last 30 years, and even if you didn't grow up in it, being immersed in it will change how you interact in your behavior, because you're going to be desensitized to certain mannerisms. So like we do have a large population that is just not used to, or I guess desensitized would be the word, is not used to getting actual constructive criticism, because
aren't we getting those participation trophies from people who lost Vietnam?
So it's the boomers. Boomers did this.
Yeah, I mean,
But my kid, I want my kid to get a trophy because I want to put up a trophy.
But like, then you're also dealing with issues of like, you're partially correct. There was a point I was going to make and I lost it.
Sorry. All right, I won't do that again.
There was
a bad habit.
There was a point that I wanted to make. Oh, damn it!
You were talking about how like this generation comes from a generation of participation trophies, and this sort of constant positive feedback loop is making sort of people, I think where you were going with this, I'm not really sure.
Is it maybe that, like, because one of the problems is, I'm just going to see if this trips it back in your head, Mike, is like that these people can't discern between criticism and constructive criticism.
Because
that seems to be something that I've identified.
So there's part of that, but then they're also like, people are also attributing their identity to things that should not be attributed to their identity. So like, for example, being correct.
Right.
There's a lot of people out there that attribute their identity to being correct all the time. Right. And that's a problem.
Yes.
That's a problem because nobody is ever correct all the time. But
he's right though, Baz.
This gets into the point, and this gets into like how Twitter acts, how people interact on Facebook, like all the politics that's happening right now. Is so many people just like, they build these nihilistic narcissists build up these echo chambers where they're constantly right all the time, where people will not tell them when they're wrong because they want them to like them. You get to this point of where any sort of constructive criticism, to Ben's point, they can't discern between what is constructive criticism and what is an attack on their person and their identity. So then they just mix the two to the point of where they're both the same thing. So like in that environment, you go to tell somebody they're doing something wrong, not to like insult them, but to help them do a better job into the future. It's like, hey buddy, I love you, but you're fucking up. Like, we need to fix this. So they're like, it's like, I can't believe you would do that to me. Like I'm such a narcissistic nihilist that I don't believe I could ever be wrong. So how could you do this to me? How could you claim that that I'm fallible? Like, you're hurting me.
You're right.
And it's like,
and the thing is that's illustrated in our language a lot.
Yeah.
Like I use this example, right? So when I started in my last job, I was called a junior, or I applied for the role and was interviewed for the role and all the rest of it, of the junior role. And in the meeting, in the interview, the HR lady went, we don't really use the word junior. So we're just going to delete that. You're just going to be the title. And I was like, there's senior, right? There's still senior. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, right. So everyone's going to know I'm junior because I'll be the only one there without a prefix, because you had senior and then you had lead. And it's like, right. So if it goes lead, senior, blank, they're going to know that blank just means junior. Yeah. And it was like, and I'm just sitting there going like, that's not actually a problem. If I'm junior, I'm junior. If that means that there's scope to progress to senior, happy days. Like, I don't really mind. It's like, yeah, well, but your role in the team is equally valid. It's like, And in my mind, I don't want to say this because I've just met this person, but in my mind, I'm going, well, it fucking shouldn't be. I'm the junior. Why would my job be equally valid? Why aren't I on their salary then? Because I'm not as valuable to the company as them, and that's fine. It's like I've done, and it's like Baz when you talk about how your background does impact it. So I've done judo my whole life. So it's like the idea that you're a white belt. That's a fact. That's just it. You're a white belt. Like, you can wish you were a black belt. You can say, can we get rid of the colors? You're still a white belt. Everyone knows you're still a white belt. But it comes back to your point about the first person you need to stop lying to is yourself. It's like, you ain't kidding. I know I'm still the junior guy because I'm not anything. I don't have any other words in front of my job title.
So much to learn. Like, that's the point,
right? And that's fine.
You have to increase the capabilities that are in your war chest in order to be a senior.
Right, and it's just like, but the big thing the thing that particularly bugs me about that, especially when people try and do it through manipulation of language, is you don't actually change anything. No. It's like all it is people just have to take one extra step to establish, oh yeah, Ben's the junior guy. And it's like, and that's really the idea. It's like you have made junior an epithet, not me.
Yep.
I was fine with it, but you've assumed that I'm going to be upset or annoyed about it. Is like that's the one that really pisses me off with this, is when the because of the established premise of people getting very easily upset by things, which is fine, but then what you do is you get upset and then you learn that that's okay, and then you toughen up and then it's not a problem anymore, rather than trying to bend reality to perpetuate the problem rather than just solving it. It was like when I joined, there was another guy called Ben, and he was taller than me. So people started calling me Little Ben. And then people came up to me and said, we don't want to call you that because you might find it offensive. You might find it offensive. They didn't even fucking ask me if I did find it offensive. They just spoke in the conditional of you might find it offensive. It's like, well, I don't. Well,
and this is
if you've started.
And this is
go on.
This is primarily
you don't want people to be nice to you.
No, that's not it. No, that's not it.
Everybody out there,
that's what I hear.
Call him Little Ben and Junior.
Yeah, this is primarily primarily a white people problem. This is primarily a.
Oh, you reckon? Oh, yes, I know, 100%. Oh, on the offended front, absolutely. Oh my god.
American front, because there's.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because a woman that I've been dating for a while, she's a Latina paramedic and all this other stuff. But we had a discussion about this exact thing the other night, where she was just like, like there were women where she was saying something about Latin culture or something like that, and there was a white girl that made a comment. I was like, well, I think that's a little offensive to the Latin community. She's like, bitch, I'm Latin. Like, you don't get to do this here. And so, like, and
Mike, did you hear the trepidation in your own voice when you went, there was a white woman? Because we know that even by saying that, they're looking up everywhere, like the opening scene in The Lion King, going, someone saying something offensive. And then, because it's true, it's amazing. It's like the ones that are supposed to be on paper in the identity politics league tables, the least offendable, have positioned themselves to be the most offendable.
No, they're the most offensive.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Is what they are, because they're assuming.
I agree.
It's like, oh no, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to protect you from offense. It's like, I'm not offended to begin with.
Yeah.
You need to just fuck right off.
Yeah. But like, because Derek, you make it's a very funny and very good point about like, oh, you just don't want people to be nice to you. No. It's just to do with the fact that it's like, no, I just want you to be real with me. You want
people to be kind to you. You don't want people to be nice to you. There's a difference.
Right.
Being nice to you is catering and is coddling. Being kind is telling you true things that might also be good.
When you don't want to hear it.
But okay, that is true. But in this case, the two examples that you gave is we're not going to call you Junior because I mean you are doing the job, right? I mean you're doing the full job, and then they're not going to call you Little because you're not little. It's just
it was in comparison, like
who's taller.
But that doesn't work, right? It's like the thing with that is the nickname one in particular, because the Junior one is a technicality of like corporate nonsense, trying to be all accommodating when they just do the exact opposite. They just put everyone on eggshells. But the nickname thing is like the whole point of nicknames is that they're organic and that they develop.
It's an additional identifier
without real. Yeah, but it's like nobody had a meeting and went. It's settled then, Little Ben. It just started.
To Derek's point, you don't know that.
Yeah,
I
mean, maybe
that's true. It's true. But then it's like,
what are we gonna do? We could call him Tall Ben. You're like that didn't roll very well. Little Ben sounds better.
Big Ben.
Yeah. It's like Big Ben. That belongs to a clock, so we can't call him that.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, before people have a go at us, it's actually the bell in the clock. So it's actually the thing that's called Big Ben. Just before, the clock is actually just called the Houses of Parliament clock.
Very creative.
We
no wonder everybody calls it Big Ben.
I think this is important because everything just gets its name, and then it doesn't really matter what it's named. Like the fucking bean in Chicago. It is called. Its real title is Cloudgate, but everybody looks at it and goes, "That's a fucking bean. It's a big bean."
Yeah, it's the bean.
But that's what I mean, though, right? But then it's like you can't. You then, if that's organically and kind of naturally become its name, it's just called the bean. Yeah. Then surely the thing to do is then leave it be. That is what people have come to know it as. So
you mean as long as people don't call you little bitch Ben, right? that it's fine.
Like certainly not where I worked before. That would never have happened. But like if we're talking about a place that Junior might be a bit offensive, they're definitely not going to tolerate little bitch. But
I said little bitch Ben. I didn't say little. Bitch.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, that's fine then. Yeah,
that's fine. As long as you ask him, does it roll well? I feel like you like things to just kind of be. You don't want to
prickly.
You don't. Yeah.
Well, it's particularly with something like nicknames. Like there's a great Greg Davis, excellent British comedian, does a bit about where he talks about his mum said to him before he started secondary school,
don't talk to strangers.
Well, he said no. Well, she said to him like, people can take your money from you, or they can hurt you or whatever, but they can never take your name away from you. That's yours forever. And then he just goes like that, ladies and gentlemen, as we know, is horseshit. Because children can take your name with no reason. And he gives examples of the best ones that he's found, right? Like one of them, a nickname that somebody had was Baghdad. And he was like, some clever link to the Middle East there, Greg. That's why he was called Baghdad. It's like, no. He was called Baghdad for 5 school years because he came in with a new bag that he informed us was bought for him by his dad. Yep. And that's why he got called Baghdad.
Yeah.
And then the best one was Mumbo, because he went like, and this guy was still really angry about it apparently. So he goes like, okay, why were you called Mumbo? And he goes, well, because apparently my mum's got BO.
Yeah. See, you know what? I think we've proven maybe nicknames in corporate culture just should not be around.
No, they absolutely should be around.
Yeah. This is the kind of shit that is a legal problem.
I do see where, like, if you were organizing a meeting and somebody went, oh yeah, Baghdad's always running late. That doesn't like that. It raises more questions than it answers. But so I don't foresee that happening. If we were doing a client meeting, nobody would go Little Ben. They would refer to me with my name. But it's a colloquialism, right? That's what a nickname is, and it's like we shouldn't these. I'm stopping short of calling them institutions, but we should let them be because they're part of us. They shape they shape us. They shape who we are. Like,
well, the ultimately the problem is that like we keep trying to compartmentalize people more and more. Like, so like
right.
when it like,
what do you mean by that?
Part of the issue with like the whole like corporate not trying to like offend you with a title that literally is like one of the dumbest things ever is that like we need the corporations or the business side of things to stop trying to hire people based off classifications like diversity and sex. Like you literally like in order to start fixing things, like if you want your company to be effective, it's not because you have the proper distribution of different ethnicities in your team. It's you have the proper distribution of people that are meant to do a good job. So like once you start doing that, then you start getting away from all this like, oh, like I shouldn't refer to your ethnicity because it could offend you, or I shouldn't refer to your title because it could offend you. It's like, no, everybody here is to do a good job. That's it. You start because like you don't fix politicizing all these things by further politicizing more things. Like that doesn't make sense.
You are in a crusade with white women today. You really just
they're annoying because they're emotional and they're irrational, and I can't stand it, dude. I've never been able to stand it. You could actually
I think that's you could ask. I don't know what you're talking about.
The funny thing is, you could ask my mother about this. Like ever since I got to the point of being 15 to where girls started getting like, interesting to all of us. I was never good at dating because I didn't understand how people couldn't follow the rational like thought process. Because I never understood like the whole like overly emotional kind of stuff. It's like, oh, well, like I don't want to call you this because I don't want to offend you. It's like, no, I want you to say something to me, or I'm going to say something to you because it's rational and it's true, and you should probably hear it so you can fix it, not whether it's going to offend you or not.
Look, we've all been confused for having autism. Here. So that's
actually I have not. Nobody has said that to me.
That's a crazy one.
That's something an autistic person would say, though. Like you don't need to deny it. You don't need to deny it. Don't feel defensive about it.
Talk about it, man.
Yeah.
That's fine.
This is the safe space.
Well, okay. The idea, so what is your solution? Is just no restrictions, just everybody do what they want on the hiring process?
That's not what I heard.
That's not what I said.
Or
no, let's go into it though. Let's go into it.
Yeah. What?
No, so like if you're going to hire somebody, you hire them off their merits, but you don't hire them off their sex or their ethnicity. That's literally all you have to do. Like just stop looking. Stop having the classification of like, are you white or are you Hispanic? It's like it doesn't matter. Are you male or are you female? Doesn't matter. Can you?
I never answer that.
Can you do the job? Can you do the job that we're asking you to do? Do you have the experience to do the job that we're asking you to do? Both get check marks? Great. Let's talk about getting a position here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what if the person doing the hiring is biased? Is there any way to protect against somebody?
No, because everybody has their biases. The only way to fix that is the really long, like the bigger picture solution is to increase awareness in the populace, in parents and in children. You have to get to the parents first, usually, to like bring awareness to biases, because most people aren't even aware of their own biases because they grew up in echo chambers. Like you can see this in politics, Democrats and Republicans. Both sides think they're right all the time. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to vote this way. I'm just going to vote this way because we're always right. It's like, no, like 80% of the time, you're probably wrong. Like, and
that I've never heard somebody say it so succinctly before, that there is a cohort of people out there who tie being correct to their identity.
Yeah,
but you're absolutely right. That's a really good point, because I've had that where you meet people and like, I don't know, you'll be in a tete-a-tete and you'll be maybe disagreeing about something, and somebody who knows the person that you're disagreeing with goes, oh, he's usually pretty spot on about these things. So yeah, give a fuck. Oh, we're discussing it right now, so let's talk about it right now.
Yeah.
It's like, why? At what point? What are they foreseeing? Are they foreseeing me in that conversation going, oh, well, then I relinquish my position in the argument. Oh, I didn't realize this man has a reputation for for correctly recalling facts.
Yeah, he could
request.
He could be Stephen Hawking. I'm still going to discuss with him the merits of like talking about going through the event horizon and what it could be like. Like, I don't care if he's been right about however many things in the past. We don't know if either one of us is right here, so we're going to talk it out.
But if I'm sitting there watching, I'm probably going to I'm going to listen to Steven probably.
Yeah, I would too.
Reputation.
Like, that's the other thing is like, like if you're in a, that's the other thing is like when you're in those kinds of engagements, nobody is like required to side with anybody. So like, and I say this on like, I say this on Twitter and on Spaces all the time. It's like when people have been asking me about the macroeconomic situation and all this other stuff. It's like, hey, I don't think anybody should listen to what I have to say, but this is what I'm seeing, and this is why I think the way that I think. That's all. That's all it should be. That's all that should be done. And then people can hear both sides.
It's amazing.
And then they can pick which other side they think is correct. That's how it should be.
It's amazing though how that disclaimer adds to one's credibility. When you say things like, "Look, I don't." For example, I specifically remember this at when I was at university, right? So I remember I was at university and it was the first day of our course, and we all had to like stand up and give a little intro about ourselves. And I just went like, look, I just want to tell you, I don't know the first thing about what we're studying here because it's all new to me, but I do want to let you know that I'm really excited to study it with you all and blah, 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 whatever.
And then at the end of that year, it makes you more trustworthy.
What was crazy was at the end of that first year, we were all in the pub. Me and my boys were all in the pub. And one of them actually said to me, he just went like, yeah, when you said that, I thought, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. I was like, now, isn't that incredible? Because what I specifically said was that I don't know what I'm talking about. And it was like, but it was because everybody else,
effect, baby. But
it's like, but it was also compared to my peers because and I didn't do it knowingly. It was like, I just did it because I was genuinely really excited to be there, to be studying and to be, the authenticity once again.
That is where you took the fake it till you make it and you threw it out the window. Because it literally has no validity in the real world.
Well, yeah, because you're right. A lot of it was a lot of those intros were battles of credentialism. Yeah. So it was a lot of people standing up and going like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I was like the fastest sprinter in my county, and I once got 101 likes on an Instagram post."
This is also why I think more people need to be forced into taking studies in philosophy and debate. Because I took my favorite classes in college were ethics and other assorted philosophical classes because you learn how to have like these actually well-structured discussions and arguments, which people don't know how to do. Because when you're having like these kinds of discussions and like whether it's a debate or just a straight up discussion about something, as soon as you start reverting to your merits on things that you've done, your argument in the discussion has eroded. Like you're like the
appeal to authority.
Sure. Because you're trying to attribute to authority or something like that. And then you also have to pay attention to the fact of like, as soon as the individual stops trying, like veers away from the context of the discussion to try and attack the individual's person, their argument is also further invalidated because it's showing weakness because you can't figure out a way to prove that your argument is more valid within the confines. So you're going outside to try and attack the person and elicit an emotional response.
But why not call him so-called journalist Matt Taibbi? I don't get to do that. I can't call him.
Or Mario Nawfal.
He's not been a journalist for the past 30 years or whatever. So I get to call him so-called journalist.
I love
Matt
that.
Taibbi.
I mean,
cool.
Like Matt Taibbi, we could also call him other things. We could also call him
a lot
Alex
of things.
Jones promoter. Like we could do that. Because he is that.
To be fair, though,
you really want to do this?
To be fair,
I mean,
Alex Jones.
I'm just saying, if you're
so like you have to give credit where credit is due.
That is true.
I understand that.
That is important.
You wanted to limit what we could say about him. I was like, well, we could just say something else that is also true.
But the thing is, I really like as an epithet though. So called is good because it's technically correct. Yep. Like so, you could just because you could get away with doing that about anything. Yeah. Like you could just go like so called sprinter Usain Bolt. Because he's a so-called sprinter. We do call him that.
There's also no technical classification for a journalist. If you're journaling,
right.
you're a journalist.
You with your linguistic understanding. This is that is a very good point.
Typically, journalists are seeking for the truth, regardless of who gives it.
Well, that's what's crazy, and like I genuinely didn't think we were going to bring this up, but it feels like an opportune moment to bring up the lockdown files in the UK because, interestingly,
I don't sitting on this for the whole hour and
we're
45 minutes.
Checking off all the reasons to ban a video.
I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I genuinely didn't think it was going to come up. But we were talking about journalists because when you're talking about the subversion, right? That you're absolutely right, and that's something Andrew Doyle actually talks about this quite a lot. Brilliant British satirist, where he talks about this a lot. Where he says almost exactly what you said, in fact, about why don't we teach it in schools anymore? We used to teach things like, oh, are you resorting to epithets and insults? Well, then your argument's weak. Yeah. And it's like we used to do that. We used to teach that in British schools. Certainly not in my lifetime. I don't know what era he's talking about, but apparently in time gone by, we once taught in this country how to hold a discussion. And have
in some places.
Sometimes, like, I love things like the English common law tradition of, for example, the Speaker of the House. I like that about the idea that in the House of Commons you always address your opposite number in the third person.
Yeah, but to your point, the majority, most people don't get that. They don't get that. Most people don't get that. Like that's like my school was in a wealthy, like I went to a wealthy high school. I wasn't wealthy, but like the high school I went to was, and so we had classes. We had like classics. You could take a classics track at my like. How many high schools have classics tracks?
Not many.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
8.
I didn't read Orwell until I'd left school. Like that. That's
8 specifically.
That's really good. I hate you when you have your timing like that. I'm like, fuck, that's good. Yeah, that's so good.
But like, it's the reason why I saw the link here. The reason why I spotted the link is because with the lockdown files story, which for anyone listening who doesn't know, is which is nobody. But the lockdown files are 100,000 WhatsApp messages have been leaked to the Telegraph newspaper, documenting the conversations between British politicians during the COVID lockdowns, effectively revealing that it wasn't based on science. It was based on knee-jerk reactions to both public opinion and political agenda, as opposed to actually protecting people. So basically everything we suspected, but it's now just
and this gets into what we have been talking about with regards to like how people like your people aren't telling people the truth because they're afraid of like the actual like reality.
Yeah.
So like with regards to all of that, like people didn't want to hear that the vaccines are ineffective because they wanted to believe that they did the right thing. And
also that they wanted to believe that they were safe, right? Like they wanted to believe that they were in fact protected.
Yeah. Which now that like if you look into the science and you actually talk to the doctors that designed the technology or have explicitly been working with it for the last 3 years, the more that you take of those jabs, the worse your immune response is.
Right.
I don't know. Is that true? We're saying these things very quickly. I don't know what the lockdown files is.
Let's. Okay, no, that's not a problem. Let's stay on that.
Yeah.
We'll stay on that. But so the lockdown. For example, there were things like Matt Hancock, who was the health secretary, so our Fauci, he said in one of the WhatsApp messages when it was either Omicron or Delta, one of the new variants, I can't remember which, but he says in this conversation, he's asking, when should we deploy the new variant? Now, obviously, he doesn't mean like a bioweapon, but what he does mean is, when do we tell the public? At what point do we tell the public? And the reason why that rouses suspicion is because if it's a threat to health, the answer is fucking immediately. Why is this even a conversation? Yeah. An emergency news bulletin should be released immediately explaining that there is a new variant and that we should be taking precautionary measures. But it's not. It's withheld strategically to create maximum impact and cause the effect. And then like even to the point where there was another conversation that was documented about bringing forward what the UK ended up calling Freedom Day, which is when the restrictions were being relieved. And Hancock's position was, we can't do that. We can't bring it forward because it's too far ahead of public opinion, which is basically code for we've scared the pants off people so badly and so to such a hyperbolic degree that now we risk falling out of favor with the public by releasing the restrictions when we know that the science tells us we can. And the problem that erodes faith in government, and because it's all like at first, and this is the point to tie it back to what we were talking about with Mike, was I thought it was pretty questionable to begin with, because I was expecting, what I was waiting for was a politician to come out and deny it, and then I know it was true. But that's not the modern technique for squashing a news story these days. It used to just be outright denial. Now it is subversion. So the only story, and the reason why this ties in is because we're talking about the idea that if you're losing your foothold in a discussion or in a head-to-head with somebody, you then start attacking their character, or you start subverting their attention. Well, the only thing that the mainstream media is reporting in the UK, sorry, I'll just finish this bit. The only thing the mainstream media is reporting on in the UK is that is whether or not the journalist who broke the story was paid to release these messages.
Woof.
That, or the whistleblower rather, because I don't actually think Isabel Oakeshott is a journalist. I think she was a government official who leaked it. So, and it's like they're not even addressing whether or not the content is true. They're not even coming out to say whether or not it's true. They're just trying to subvert attention into, well, this woman was paid by the Telegraph to leak these stories. She broke an NDA. And it's like, which you're allowed to do if you're a whistleblower. Yep. And it's like, that's the thing that really concerns me. Again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go down on this tangent.
Exactly what they did with Edward Snowden.
Yeah, that's what I equate it to, is the Snowden story.
Because that's literally what he said. He was like,
it's Britain's Snowden, because why was Snowden so impactful? Because it was everything that people were pontificating about for decades. The government spying on us, the government spying on us, the government spying on us. Oh, look, there's evidence. And then it was the same with this, like, the government, like in Britain, the government.
Not just that the government is spying, but particularly with extreme breadth and extreme depth.
Yes, quite.
And works in conjunction with the biggest tech companies and the most powerful tech companies in the world to do it.
Well, it was also, they were memes, right? Like the meme of when your FBI guy texts you. And like that was a meme, and then it transpires that meme, like all good comedy, was based in truth. Like, so, and then this is the problem with the people were speculating up and down the UK of, they just feel like they're making it up as they go along. They're just picking dates. There's no real, it doesn't feel like there's any method to this. Oh, okay, we're going to push it back, 3 months? Okay, has COVID got a schedule to keep? What is going on with this? This is the most organized virus in history. And it's just like, it's all just, and then these texts come out to substantiate it, because the other reason why I questioned it to begin with is I'm of the disposition where I want it to be true. When linking that to when we're talking about biases.
Right.
That's where, and that was a problem, because I can't stand the government, so I don't want it to be true. Or I want anything that makes them look like bastards, I want it to be true. And so initially I was like, look, it's very easy to Photoshop some fake WhatsApp messages. But it's how they responded to it that has led me to believe that it probably is true.
Yep.
So I'm listening to
this,
and what I want is, okay, so what you're telling me is that these people who are politicians.
What do you mean these people?
Oh no.
These people in the lockdown files, that they were just kind of making it up as they go along because they've never done this before?
Ooh.
Or I guess what are they?
Good point.
What is the like?
Well, it's not that we do have health protocol. The government has had it for foot and mouth. The government has had it for swine flu, for avian flu. They've had measures.
There's also a point here to defend Derek, in the sense of politicians aren't experts in really much of anything. So they aren't going to really. This is also part of the problem with the whole response is that we didn't, like politicians, the populace didn't listen to the proper experts because we were all just beholden and entrenched in fear. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, and then some people were like, they weren't listening because they didn't want to be scared. I'm not fucking scared. I'm not scared.
Right.
See, now,
I had some people
so
telling me to come back for Christmas, and I was like, I'm not gonna come down there. You're 70 years old.
There's also,
and then they text me a week before Christmas, and they say, "Don't worry, we have COVID. Come see us anyway." I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna fucking go see you now because I don't want to get COVID.
Because I'll get it."
I have
right.
no
There's
health
also
care.
an issue with like with COVID and with things like climate change is that what people aren't adhering to or adhering to the nuance of is that what's one of the reasons, excluding all the conspiratorial crap, what's one of the reasons why this pandemic was so bad, and we also think that the climate is getting so much worse than, in my opinion, it really is? Because the technology has progressed in the last 50 years to the point of where we can see things with greater depth and greater breadth and greater speed than we ever have been. So the fear hits harder, the fear hits faster, and the fear spreads faster to the point of where we think that things are getting worse as they're going. But it's not that things are necessarily getting worse.
We don't acknowledge.
We can just see more.
Yeah.
So nobody has been like having that discussion. Nobody. So we look at how, like, particularly let's go down the whole climate change rabbit hole. We look at people use don't do it. But we look at things like they're like one of the justifications is that hurricanes keep getting worse. Now, maybe that's true. Maybe it's also the fact that the amount of assets that are in the path of hurricanes has increased because the population has also increased, which increases the number of assets that are in the path. And because of currency debasement, the dollar value of all those assets is also going up. And we have more technology
and which is how we measure the damage.
And we also have more technology to measure the depth of that damage and how fast it's going. So we think that these hurricanes are hitting with greater and greater force, when in reality, it's probably more of a toss-up.
Well, do you know the trouble on the climate change front? The one that gets me is when I know, and look, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll take care of it.
But it's like the thing that gets me is this constant hunt for the silver bullet, rather than the nuanced approach.
So I'm gonna push us and kind of refocus us. Why? I'm really interested why we can't have discussions anymore.
Because
I think that's nobody talks about that. No one talks.
In my opinion, that's the stuff that
nobody discusses that.
In my
see, I was trying to avoid it.
In my opinion, that gets back to the issue of the populace being all these nihilistic narcissists that can't have honest conversation with anybody to begin with. Like, you can't have an honest conversation with people about, like, hey, your drawing's a little off, maybe you need to work on this. If they can't handle that, or the fact that, hey, you're obese, you're a fat fuck, maybe you should go to the gym. If they can't handle that, they definitely can't handle, like, the really, really big, more nuanced conversations.
I think something that's really
thing.
Nice. I knew Derek. I was like, he's not gonna let that one slide.
but
he's like,
hey,
I was thinking in my head.
Here's what I love about the fat fuck thing.
As far as the sensitivity to that, it's literally no different. It's literally no different than somebody being judgmental to somebody being like, hey, you're a skinny ass. It's the same thing. But nobody cares about.
But it's also
nobody cares about.
Wait. Hang on.
Skinny kid stuff. They only care about the sensitivity to the fat people. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Fat people kill themselves because they're fat.
Well, there is that.
I'm gonna veer us. Here is something that I do think is real. Like, I mentioned earlier.
How does a fat person kill themselves?
No,
because they can't.
No, let's not go there.
They can kill themselves any way they want. That's how they kill themselves. They can do anything they want.
There's a bit for you, I did not expect that.
I think we found our intro.
Yeah, that'll be the clip. Yeah. How do fat people kill themselves?
Any way they want.
Just like everyone else.
If you've been watching Ben for the last couple of minutes, he's been sitting on that. Like, it was churning in his head. He's like, wait a minute. And he's like, I'm not going to ask it. No, I need to ask this.
I was sitting there thinking, that's got to be one hell of a light fitting. That's got to be some craftsmanship.
Oh my God.
It's gone into that. That curtain rail has been put up with bolts of iron.
That is...
Oh, man. That was so beautiful, Derek.
I hate you.
That was... Mwah. Oh, my God.
I forgot what we were talking about. Jesus.
Yeah, me too. You were trying to bulldoze us off.
Derek was the one that made that all great right there. So thank you, Derek.
That's a good. I mean, yeah, he's right. It's the
good. We were talking about why we can't discuss things anymore.
Yeah,
but
we're talking about.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about I wanted to say I was reading an article on therapy, and how therapy is becoming sort of less and less effective for guys, right? And I think. One of the issues I have with American, basic American therapy is not something specialized like CBT, and even then I'm like you gotta make sure that your person's legit because there's a lot of phonies out there. But it's true. No. I mean, no.
I would technically be
people who are position themselves. No, people who well, yeah. I mean, if you said you were a therapist, but you didn't say you were a therapist, so they're a therapist. I don't know. I observe the way sort of therapy is becoming sort of ineffective, or is becoming at least ineffective in the United States to some degree. And I wonder how much of that is due to people not being sort of challenged. And then I was thinking about the connection, making the leap from that to relationships, because if your spouse isn't being challenged by their own therapist, how are they going to face challenges in your own sort of interactions?
Well, okay, so Chris Williamson actually had a podcast with, I think, Dr. Alan Smith or Dr. Adam Smith. I can't remember. But he's a guy.
Williamson.
Yeah,
right? Ben. Every time.
Perfect timing. Yeah. Every single time he has one come out.
Every time I'm like, oh, I wish you'd do that, and then I see Chris puts a video up an hour ago.
He's probably
on that topic.
Podcast
I hate that man. He doesn't know, but I hate him.
They actually talked about this with the fact that the problem with American therapy is that it's approaching the male side of the conversation as women. Like you don't.
What do you mean?
You don't fix men the way you fix women. Like that should be common conception, in my opinion. Like, men and women think differently, very, very, very differently. Not completely differently.
Yeah.
In what way?
So men tend to this goes into all the stuff that Jordan Peterson has talked about. Men tend to be more focused on things like engineering, the STEM stuff, science, technology, all that sorts of nonsense. Women tend to be more focused on the
cookies.
The cookies. women tend to be
send your letters
more interested in the human part of things. So interacting with people, being teachers, being therapists, being doctors, being nannies, being nurses. They're all interacting with people, whereas most of the men, the jobs that we go into, engineering, scientists, all sorts of
not a single person.
Just less reliance on people, more trying to build things, and more importantly, build solutions. Right. So
yeah, that's true.
So when you have that, if you're, I don't know what causes it. Then you're getting into evolution and all that crap. Because okay, so briefly on that, as a guy, if you want to find a mate, the way you're going to do it is you build up resources and you build up a living space to where you can accommodate a woman to come into your life, right?
fuck, I did it wrong.
But
wait a second. Wait.
Do that.
I'm not gonna let you fuck this up because let me tell you what. I've seen some ugly comics with some fine bomb ass girls. Right there is something that's a yes. Don't you do it, Derek?
Okay.
Don't you do it? And it was in Chicago, and I know because I participated. No, I didn't participate in the weird stuff, but no, I've seen that shit. I've seen it work. There's something about a dude, and you know it exists. You know it happens, and you know it exists because it doesn't happen to the female comics. They're tossing mozzarella sticks post show. That's not what we're doing. You're a good guy.
but
that's not what some guys
kind of crooked euphemism is tossing mozzarella sticks.
No, literally, they are eating. Like they're just hanging out. Like no one's soliciting. Right. None of the guys are approaching them after the show. Women are approaching male comics after the show all the time.
But okay, so that's like women enjoy guys that make them laugh. Like there's a whole thing. Like every guy,
that's just code for
every
tall.
guy grows up like learning that. Like women love laughing.
Right.
But okay, so back to the whole conversation point around like why male therapy isn't working. When women are sad, they want to be heard and they want to talk about their feelings. They want feelings shared, right? When guys are down on themselves, they want to be empowered. Like you have to empower a guy in order to fix him. Because look at the numbers of men that are coming out of the military that get depressed when they're done. Because they don't have a calling anymore. They don't feel purpose.
It's all of them.
Like you empower a guy with purpose and you also teach them the skills in order to like achieve that purpose. Depression washes away like a fucking bath.
What's super scary is the language you're using is the exact same kind of language I've heard. I listened to an interview with a guy who recruited for a skinhead.
Ah, damn it!
Like
I knew you were going to do that.
Skinhead organization.
Yeah, but that works though.
But he was very smart. He's like, if you want to get somebody in, you give them a place. They have to have a personality or like a
that's
place,
how because that's how they get them.
A community.
That's how they get them.
Yeah. And the trouble is that it doesn't. That's absolutely true because unfortunately, effective techniques can be weaponized.
That's also
it's like when you.
To your point, that's also how army recruiters and military recruiters succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I mean,
it works,
and I'd like that. I'd like a
community
and place.
But the point is that in like American male therapy, they're approaching it with the female side of things. Oh, talk about your feelings. Do all this stuff. Be vulnerable. It's like no, like part of the whole masculine thing is that you choose who you're vulnerable with, and that establishes a connection, like a relationship, right? Like you don't just walk around being vulnerable all the time. Nature will lop you off as part of the natural cooling process. Like you have to be cold in reality in order to get a lot of shit done. Like you have to be.
Right. I think being around other guys makes me not want, like growing up.
Just say
You're around a bunch of guys. They find out they're like, if you hit him in the nuts, he cries, and they laugh.
But that's
a
different kind of vulnerability, though. So, like when you're around a group of guys, you don't just like, "Hey, dude, I'm feeling super insecure right now." You don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, that was like that happened. For example, you know when everyone went through the Zoom phase of lockdown, of like, let's have a quiz, let's all get on Zoom and have a quiz, and so we would do that. Like me and my boys would do that, and then we'd all, because we felt obliged, would say like, how you doing? How you getting on? How you feeling? You feeling all right? Like, cabin fever setting in. And everyone, without fail, maybe you'd get the odd one going, yeah, it's been a bit of a rough week. But most of them would just be like, yeah, good. Anyway, what you drinking?
Because guys establish camaraderie with each other because we fucking poke and prod each other all the time. Because guys talk shit. Like guys talk shit all the time. Yeah. Like that's the point.
Yeah.
The thing is, I noticed.
Can I bring up one statistic? It's not working out for all guys because the biggest.
Well, of course not.
It's not working out for
guys. Right in my age range, they're killing themselves at a stupid rate because they don't. Yeah. It doesn't work out. What happens?
Well,
there?
so like, but then
we don't talk about it, and we shoo it under
but
the.
Then you're dealing, but then you're also dealing with a lot of like sunk costs with regards to a psyche.
Yeah.
Because like when you get to the point of being like old enough, whatever that means to you, like then it gets like you're really entrenched in ways of thought and everything, and it can be really, really traumatic to try and fix those. It would be like it would be like being a heroin addict for 15 years and then trying to go off of it. Like you have to do that shit slow, methodical, precise.
There's a process.
Yeah, you have to do that like and most people, because people are very impatient and irrational, they think that they can just do it.
I can quit at any
cold
time.
Turkey or whatever. It's like no, like you can't.
I just get a Tony Robbins book, and I'm gonna fucking awaken the giant inside, and I am gonna kick this world.
And Derek, and like to go further to your point, is like guys that are like, the older you get, the harder it gets to fix you, right? Like that's basically what I'm saying. And like another problem is that like the older you get and you hit these limits, or you hit the bottom of the barrel, and you get desperate. People also tend to try and make multiple large lifestyle changes at the exact same time. And then you get to the point. Then you get to the point of where you overload yourself and you burn out really, really quickly, and you get right back to where you were. And then you can't. Then you feel like you can't accomplish anything because you're like, well, fuck, I'm right back to where I was. Like, there's no point in even trying because I clearly can't. And then you get in this cognitive negative feedback loop, death spiral of where you feel like you can't do anything. Because I've been there.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So here's my. Here's my thing. My thing is, what? God damn it, Derek. What? Okay, so where do people go from it? Like that's what I'm trying to get to. And Derek, fucking Derek.
I'm sorry.
He's putting on his puppy.
You're the worst. The thing. Yeah, don't let him fool you. The thing is here's the thing, because here my. I don't care about a lot of this stuff. I mean, I care about it, but it's not in this to the same value. Wait,
after everything we've just talked about, I don't care about this.
Wait. Hang on. So I don't care in the sense that like it doesn't affect me.
Right.
Why should I care? Why should I give a shit? No, seriously, because like that seems to be the issue. Because like Derek, you're like, why? Like, so what do we, do about that? And I'm like, we don't talk about it. Like, I'm joking, but I'm also not. Yeah. Like, that's literally what we do, and it seems really like the Herculean. The ESL came out there. Yeah. I don't know these words. The task seems to be, how do you get people to even care about these things? Because it seems like, and I don't know if this is, I have my own theories about this. Me personally, I think women respond to male pain very differently than how men respond to men suffering pain. And I think some of that is evolutionary. And they don't, like, I know, at least this is purely anecdotal. In my experience, women don't seem to be very empathetic about whatever the male experience is. Fine, okay. The problem is when it becomes macro.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not one of those people who's like, he's like, you have to get married. I'm like, I don't care what you do. Like do whatever. But once things start, when your society starts deteriorating, what do you do? Can you incentivize people to care about a thing that may not actually apply to their own life?
No, you don't. You don't.
Well,
like
that's all, folks. This is great.
Seriously, because this is also a problem where like, it's kind of virtue signaling, and it's kind of something else that I haven't really pinned down yet. But where people like to pretend about something that doesn't pretend to care about something that doesn't touch their life. Like one of my favorites that I absolutely loathe is when a celebrity dies and people act like they emotionally care. Like it touched their lives. It's like, I loved Robin Williams as much as the next person, but him dying does not touch my life in any meaningful regard. So I'm not going to go out on Facebook or pretend like I'm crying about it. So like, so that's a problem. But B,
and the other thing is, but the thing that annoys me about that, just to zone in on there, because that's a really poignant point you've made, is how by not being overt about it, the implication is that you are therefore the exact inverse, and therefore you are completely you're almost glad he died.
Yeah.
When it's like, no, I just don't want to engage in a public sphere. Like, I can acknowledge that it is a very, very sad thing that a man took his own life, a man who was loved by millions, whilst understanding that to me as an individual, it doesn't
impact my life.
Affect my life day to day.
Why should I care about this particular person?
And I don't think that's insensitive. Yeah, I'm with you.
Because like then you get to the point of like why I said like you don't fix it without it touching people's lives. Like you have like the people, like there's a reason why there's a reason why reason why people who care about veterans' depression are people that had veterans in their lives, because they had veterans in their lives and they've seen how it impacted them, so therefore they care.
And it fucks
up. But if you've never experienced it before, you have zero reason or justification to care. And I don't think that you should feel like you're like required to care about something that you have no reason to care about, because that doesn't make sense.
So then here's my thing with that. That's fine. I think though, like when maybe I'm just the type of person who just focuses too much on the macros. Like when you look at these things over time, to what Derek was alluding to, like 60% of men aren't engaged in any sort of intimate act or intimate, any sort of intimacy, it sounds like, with another woman. These are your brothers. These are people you know. Like that means there's people I know.
But you don't know because alone. They haven't vocalized it.
Okay. Well, now we're cooking. So that means
because they would get rightly mocked. Yeah. I would fucking
they
you
would.
Fucking virgin.
You don't get no bitches. Like
You haven't had sex in a year. You're a fucking virgin. Again,
but it's also because people lack the communication skills to put that out there in a way where it's going to reduce the likelihood of them getting mocked. It's like, hey man, like I got to be honest, I'm kind of struggling here. Like I haven't gotten laid in a year. It's like then you're just like, oh shit, dude, that sucks. Like.
Right. Yeah, you're right. The framing is everything. The framing is everything.
That is true though. The framing is everything, because I think that's the thing people confuse with vulnerability in relationships, right? People are like, well, men don't want to be vulnerable, or women don't want to hear men being vulnerable. When in actuality, it's like, yeah, they want you to express your vulnerability. However,
depends on how you express it.
To be correct.
Yeah, this idea that if you ever show your emotions to a woman, she's going to think you're a little bitch, and she's never going to want to get into bed with you again. It's like, well, no, it depends on how, and it depends on also. One thing that it does depend on is frequency. Yeah. If she comes home and you're weeping every night over the dinner table, then yes, okay, maybe she will lose interest. But it's like.
And I would lose interest in her too if she did that shit. So it's fair. It's fair. Yeah, it's very fair.
But it's like the one thing is, I think there is a reciprocity to the misreadings of the sexes. So it's like, because for example, I remember hearing this years ago with, but it's like this Irish journalist, she was on a radio show, and she was saying how one of the problems when you hear boys in the playground is a lot of their insults are female oriented. Don't be such a girl. Don't be such a pussy. And I was like, that's all true. But have you ever heard girls insult each other? Oh, she's got man shoulders. She's got man hands. Like, because she sounds like a man. Like, because that's just the attack vector.
You're acting or you're presenting yourself in a way that is outside of the category of like your individual.
Quite. And so it's like there is both sides are as bad as each other. So I suppose what we want to what you want to ask is
Shut the fuck up, Derek. Shut the
no,
fuck
no, no.
up.
But he's not. No, like he's not.
Shit up. Trying to.
He's not wrong.
Derek's really good at speaking with his face.
I really.
Yes, you are.
Well, yeah, no, that's true comic.
We need to figure out how to upload videos to Spotify. But anyway,
we're still winning in the male serial killer category. I just want to say that.
Absolutely.
You still got that unlocked. White dudes, by the way, we're number one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no need to show off, but
leaderboards.
But it was the question is then we've acknowledged the precedent for what we're misreading. Where, in your view, do we go from here? How do we build?
Well, you gotta get back to the basics, like we were talking earlier. Like whether you're gonna fix men or fix women, people need to start being more honest with themselves. Because when you're more honest with yourself and you acknowledge and admit to your flaws, then it also becomes better to identify with flaws in individuals. Which, in case you guys haven't noticed, those flaws tend to be vulnerabilities. And then you can also establish more intimate connection with, regardless of whether it's man or woman. And then you can start to have real, meaningful relationships. I don't think very many people have meaningful relationships right now. Back when I was 23,
why would you say that about me? Why would you say that to me?
back when I was 23, like most of my relationships and friends were just people that I consumed copious amounts of alcohol with. That was it. I didn't have any friends that were actually meaningful to the point of like, oh, hey, like you're doing this entrepreneurship stuff. I want to learn how to do that from you, and establishing like a mentor kind of respect level thing like that way. Too many people are out there just establishing friendships with people that tell them what they want to hear and engage in activities that aren't necessarily healthy, but because they're doing it to escape the matters of their own reality.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you could have a whole podcast on that.
Yeah.
I think like one, I think when Ben, you and I discussed this when we started, right, was like, we got to be ourselves. And I think that seems to be the secret formula to every sort of, even with Chris, I hate him, but it's because he is himself, right? He presents himself. He's at least very good at presenting himself as very authentic, and it feels, I doubt it or anything like that. I'm just saying, he's very good at presenting himself in a way where I'm like, hey, that's a guy I would chat with, or I feel like I know the dude, right? And it's crazy to me that that's the success, like that's the key to so many successful YouTube channels, is just people genuinely being them. Like,
because
that's
everybody else is
the fact that that's a marketing characteristic. But the other thing is,
because everybody's being fake, and it establishes you different from the rest of the market.
Yes, but and then the other thing to the point you made there, Mike, is something that I really love is the idea. Oh fucking! I've lost it. Where'd it go?
I interrupted you.
I
got back at you for earlier.
Fucking yeah.
That was actually me.
Oh man, fuck's sake!
Talking about Chris Williamson and authenticity.
I actually think it was going to be
authenticity and setting people out differently from the rest of everyone else.
Oh, that was it. Thank you. So it's like one thing we're all guilty of is projection.
Yeah,
and so that's a terrible human trait. But you can make that a good thing, because to your point, and this is something that I really love that you said, is the idea of the first person you have to be honest with is yourself. Cut the shit. Be honest with yourself, because then what I found, like when I was saying to you when I was in my early 20s, and it was like, just stop, just tell the truth as to the best of your ability. Just tell the truth. Don't embellish anything. Just say the truth. Then what I found was you reveal a little bit of vulnerability with somebody, they are more than prepared to reciprocate.
Yep.
And you find that you get very deep relationships with people, not necessarily just romantic. I'm even talking friendships. You get very deep friendships with people very, very quickly, because you've now the risk with that, of course, is that some people are going to capitalize on that and see that as and misinterpret that as weakness.
But they already are.
Exactly. Unfortunately,
and this gets to the reasoning. It's like, okay, well, the next question would be, well, why does that establish a deeper connection with the individual? Because when you're honest with another individual after being honest with yourself, when you're honest with another individual, and you open up that kind of vulnerability, you're opening up a doorway as far as trust goes, where you're allowing for the opportunity for trust to get established, where if you don't use that against me to attack, if I expose vulnerability by being honest with you, I am giving you the opportunity to establish trust by not using that against me.
Chimps. Jordan Peterson's chimp troops. The biggest and strongest don't.
Everybody's got to watch you kill somebody, so like you have to stay in the gang forever.
Just stop. Just stop, Derek.
Yeah.
No,
he's right though. He's right. It's true though. It's true.
The other thing too, though, like the other thing too is like the honesty thing, because like I know a lot of young guys will take it the complete wrong way, because I did when I first heard it. It's like you be honest.
Just say exactly what's on your mind all the time.
You don't
like,
do that. No, you be honest.
Yeah, you look like shit in that dress. Wait, why are you leaving the date?
You be honest, but you have to read the room and be careful with how you deliver it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely fucking told somebody.
Yeah. We all have.
That's been our show today, you guys.
Stupid. It's not stupid. It's not even a real job. It's a real job. And they said, I'm just being honest. I said, no, you're not. You're just trying to hurt me. And you're saying that as a way to make yourself not feel bad.
Yeah.
Being honest doesn't mean you're being a dick.
There's look, it's a Venn diagram. There's overlap.
Yeah.
I think we found the closer. I think we found the closer of your.
Thanks, guys.
As always. A real job, which is so fucking stupid. The government thought it was a real job.
All right. So, Mike,
it was a real.
Thanks, Mike. Real pleasure to meeting you.
Yeah, man.
Really
so
great.
Good.
Really great
so
discussion.
Enjoyable.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether this is the real end or if you guys are just playing a bit.
No, that's the worst part. When you're doing bits all the time. Isn't that right, Derek? The non-comics don't know when the bit is over.
This is why you're supposed to be honest, so people can believe you when you say shit.
Yeah.
That's it, everybody.
That's the wrap.
Oh,
See
man.
y'all later.